everyone, welcome back to my channel. These two hats in front of me I made earlier. They are the twisted beanie, but the difference is that they have two pieces. The twist is obviously on the crown here, and this one is made in two different colors. I made this pattern so I can cut the hat and show you how I put it together. So if you want to make this one, then you cut this in two pieces, because obviously it's two colors you have here. But if you want to make just one piece hat, basically a one color, then you cut this in one piece but on the fold. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the hat, and I'm going to show you how I put it together. Okay, so this band shows that you have a fold here. This side should be folded and this side should be folded. Should be just a one piece. So to get that, I'm going to show you how you fold your fabric. And to fold your fabric, you fold it up in this direction. Okay, so once you have that done, you go back over here and you fold it this way. So now you have your fold here and your fold there. You take your pattern and you place it down exactly how and where your fold is going to be. Go ahead and cut it. Okay, so now we have the two pieces to make this hat, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Okay, so I have my two pieces here, and I also mark where I'm going to leave open. So always remember, on your pattern you mark your notches. We're going to stitch this piece first, and we have our notches here for the opening. Okay, for the opening, you can also, if you like, you can also overlock these pieces going down if you like, but it's not really necessary because it's going to be inside the hat, so it doesn't really matter. But for now, on this longer side up to this notch, I'm going to stitch this all the way, the right sides together. And when you're stitching on stretch material, as I always said, you use your zigzag because the stitch is better for when you stretch the material. Okay, so that's done, and that's this side. So you see, when you stretch with the zigzag, the thread don't break, and that's why you use zigzag. For the next side, and this is the shorter side from here to there, what we're going to do, we're going to turn it onto the wrong side. And you're going to stitch from this end just right up to this notch. Okay, so that's done. Alright, so you have your opening here, and your opening should be no more than 2 inches. You have the raw edge here facing out, and the raw edge here facing in on the right side. Okay, so we're still on this side where you just stitch that short bit here, and this is the side we're going to bring through the opening. But before you turn that, let's just find the center notch. Alright, so now we finished mark our center notch here and there. On this end where you stitch the shorter side, this is the side we're going to bring through the opening. Make sure your hat is flat on the table. So what you do, you just grab your end like this, and you bring it through the opening. Meanwhile, your fabric is still flat on the table. And as you notice, don't mind this confusion right here. If you notice now, this end is on the right side and that's on the wrong side. Alright, so you leave it like that. Alright, now, so also now the raw edge here is on the inside. This is going to be the inside of our hat. This end is going to be on the outside. So what you do on the inside, you would not see any raw edges, if that makes sense. Your hat would be nice and neat inside. If you don't want to do it like this, you just stitch it straight down just like this, and then you overlock it. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is this seam, I'm going to place it to this notch. So you find your notch and you take your seam here and you pin that right there. And then this notch here, you place it onto this seam. Alright, then what you do, you grab those two pieces of fabric and you pin them all the way to the next pin. Okay, so you have these two pinned together. Alright, after you finish on the right side, after you finish either this opening or that opening, it doesn't matter where you turn it out. So you have these two pins in the middle. So what you do, you just turn that inside out like that in order for you to grab the other halves. And once you get those, you pin that along here as well. What I noticed with stretch material, it's a good indication to know whether your stretch material, whether you're working on the right side or the wrong side. The stretch materials normally fold in on the right side. If you notice here, it's folding in on the right side. That's a good way of knowing, you know, if you're on the right side or not, especially if you're working with solid materials. Okay, so finish stitch all the way around the rim of the hat. And if you look inside here, you don't see any raw edges, which is really nice. That's what I like. And then you have your twist on top here. But what I'm going to do before anything is just secure my two pieces. Alright, so I finished stitch all the way around. And you can see the opening right here. Alright, so the next step, I'm just going to put that aside and grab my band. And you're going to open your fabric like this. And the shorter side is what you're going to stitch. Alright, so once you finish stitching that, you go back onto the wrong sides and you put your seams together. And you can pin that all the way around. Once you finish pinning this all the way around, you can go ahead and secure it with a stitch. Alright, so I finished stitch this all the way around. What I'm going to do here now, this seam that is outside, that's going to be our back seam. So you join this seam and that seam together and you pin that. You have the center notch on this and the seam that's on the hat right here, you join that notch to that seam. And once you have that, you go ahead and you pin all the way around. So I finished pinning that. I'm going to go ahead and stitch this all the way around. Okay, so I just finished stitching this all the way around, and then I went ahead and overlocked it as well. So what I'm going to do next is just turn the seam up, and over on this end I'm going to give it a stitch right on top here, but the stitch I'm going to do is zigzag as well. Okay, so the hat is done, and as you can see here is zigzag stitch I did all the way around. Okay, so this is what the hat looks like on. Let me fix that. And as you can see in the back, you can see where the twist is right here. Alright, so I'm going to show you how I make the other one that has the two different fabrics. I'm going to be using the same fabric here, and I'm just going to be joining it with this other stretch material. Okay, so cut one of this, and you cut one of this. Okay, so now we finished cutting this piece. I'm going to cut the band. Alright, so now you have your two pieces cut with the two different fabric, and you have all your notches marked, then we're all set. This is where I'm going to leave open these notch here. Okay, I have my center notch here as well, the two center notch. And I have another notch on the opposite side here from the opening. Alright, so from this end to this notch, that's the shorter side. From this notch to that side, that's the longer side. Alright, so that's how we're going to name those, the short side and the long side. But basically it's just the distance the stitch is going to be. Okay, so from this end up to this notch, you're going to leave it like this, right sides together, and you're going to stitch that. Alright, so over here you stitch from this end up to the first notch where you have your opening. So this is going to be like the outside of the hat. Okay, so now I'm going to concentrate on the opposite side. From here to there is your opening. So from this notch down, this side you're going to stitch them wrong sides together. So you're going to go like that, and you're going to stitch. Okay, so you have your stitch here. Right, and that's your opening. So now you have this seam facing the right side underneath. On this end, you're going to do the same thing as you did here. Put these two wrong sides together. You're going to reach in and bring that out, so you have them both wrong sides together. So right at this point here, you're going to stitch all the way down to the end. Alright, so this is the other stitch here. So basically what we just did on this end, you create a fold. You create a fold like right here where you have fold on the pattern, but the only difference is that you have one half the seam out and the other half the seam in. That's the only difference. You just close this end. Okay, so now we have everything all stitched up the way we want it. You have the opening right here, and this is the shorter side. This is the distance where we stitch that short side. You're going to have that side facing you because it's easier for when you go to turn. Okay, so what we're going to do next is turn our hat inside out. On this side, the one that's closer to the opening, we're going to bring this through the opening. Alright, and when you bring it, make sure you keep your fabric down on the table. When you bring it to the opening, you notice it has a funny little twist right here. Don't worry about that, because everything is going to fall right into place. You notice the raw edges facing the raw edges over here. Alright, I'm going to do that again so you see. So you have your fabric flat on the table. Right, this side that has the shorter stitch next to the opening, this is the side you're going to bring through the opening. So what you do, you can just grab it like this and then bring it through. And when you bring it through, the shorter side should be on this end. The shorter stitch should be on this end, and the raw edge should now be outside here facing this one. And the same for this side. The raw edge should be facing this raw edge. You should be able to see all the raw edges now. Also, you'll notice that you have a slight X right here. And this seam should be going that direction, while this seam coming into this direction. Okay, so now you're going to take this seam, and whatever direction you put this seam, you put that one in the opposite direction. So for example, if I bring this seam this way and I'm ready to put this seam to that, I'll bring this seam that way. So when you place the seam to seam, when you go to stitch, you will have a flat surface to stitch. This would not be as bulky as if when you put them both in the same direction. Okay, so you do that, and you have this one, the same direction. You turn this. For example, I turn this one inside on this shiny side, so I'm going to fold this seam over to that side. And I know on this end, I'll fold this seam over to the print side. So when I go to put my seams together, I would have a flat seam. Alright, so when you finish pinning that, you have the two fabric that's the same, you have them right here, and you pin those together. So you have these two together, and now either this side or that side, it doesn't matter which side you choose. All you need to do now is open these two so you can get this other two fabric together. And once you get those together, then you pin. Go ahead and you stitch that around just to hold these together, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so that's done, and right away you can see your twist right on top here, and on the inside you will see all your seams very neat. You don't have that raw edge. So now I have the band. I'm going to stitch that, but first I'm going to find the center notch right here. And once you find your center notch, then you clip that. You open your fabric and you just stitch along the shorter side. Alright, so that's done. You put your seams together. And you can go ahead and pin that around and stitch it just to hold the two pieces in place. Alright, so I just did that. I have my band, and this seam is going to be our center back seam. Okay, so we have the shorter stitch right here and the long stitch on the other end. Now you have two different fabric. You have to decide now how you want this to be on your head. If you want the seam to be straight down the middle, or you want the seam to go across. Then if you want the seam to go across, make sure that you put your seams here together and you find your center. So you notch that. And you notch that. So now you want to have, if you want to have this center seam on the sides, you can do that if you like. So now what I'm going to do is get my band, find the center seam here on my band, and as I said, the short seam here, this is going to be our center back. So I'm going to place this seam onto this seam. And this notch, then you're going to put it onto this seam. And once you have those in place, you can go ahead and stitch all the way around, pin and stitch all the way around. Okay, so this is done. I'm finished stitching that. And all I'm going to do is just overlock this end. And then I'm going to give this a top stitch all the way around, and I'm done with the hat. Alright, so now I'm finished stitching the hat and it's complete. You can see how beautiful this looks. I'm going to put it onto the mannequin head and you'll see. Okay, so this is what the hat looks like. Tell where you join right here. And then you have your twist. It depends on how you want to wear it. If you want to have your hair, a lot of your hair in it or whatever.